Yeah, hello, I'm Robert Daly. I'm an inventor of a single axis tracker for PV solar farms, and we have a round torque tube that can be used as trolley rails to build out the quarter megawatt at a time without touching the ground, rolling on the ground, having to go down the aisles. On the left, it shows loading from the aisles with an industrial PEZ dispenser. We have pre-assembled 2P modules. Then they just spit right out onto that round torque tube. But really what we're proposing is over to the right, it shows a cargo shuttle of PV modules riding down the round torque tubes for delivery, not touching the ground. This is going to be faster, better, cheaper. Here's just an example of both a pick and place and shuttle cargo carrier system. This is just a concept. What I'm going to propose is a simpler system. This is a megawatt of PV solar farm. Each row is 5 meters by 70 meters, roughly 16 rows. And how are we going to build out these rows without driving down those aisles in between them? A typical rows will have service roads that are dirt or crushed rock, but accessible. All those little squares are the posts. They're about 7 meters apart from each other. These are 4 reasons to do this. It's just faster, cheaper, safer to use the rails as trolley rails rather than going down the aisles. Maybe the aisles are muddy. Maybe they're icy with snow and just impossible to get down, or it's miserably hot. Maybe those aisles are planted with crops for agrivoltaics and you don't want to tromp on them. Or the land is environmentally sensitive and it's just best to not tramp all over that ground. I'm going to show you how we're going to build 1/4 of a megawatt at a time, 4 rows at a time. We could extend this into 8 rows in the left to right by having a bridge, but let's go with these 4 rows, which is about 40 posts, 44 posts. What we're going to do, so here are the 44 posts, and they have on top of those posts a simple bearing race, a bottom bearing race. There's no need for a top bearing race, only a top cap to keep the PV from blowing off when in the wind. All the time it's going to be rubbing on the bottom of this. And we have steel on steel bearings. The journal coupler is steel and it rubs on this bearing race, steel on steel, twice a day. It turns only twice a day, 22,000 times over 30 years. It self-seats, it's loose fitting, it's not a tight fit. It just holds this round torque tube roughly in place. Here's how we're going to start. We have a pick and place trolley platform, and then we have 2 cargo shuttles. The cargo shuttles will first hold the torque tubes, which will be pre-assembled, a 22-foot long torque tube and a journal coupler bottom half. The journal coupler is both a coupler, it couples torque tubes end to end, and it journals inside that bearing race. This is steel, and it's going to be steel on steel. The top journal coupler is not put on right now. It's put on later. This is how it's going to be done. Now, I recommend this is for PV delivery now. Those shuttles were for the torque tubes. Now they're for the PV. We recommend pre-assembly. It could be 1 in portrait or 2 in portrait as shown here. The left, they would be up against each other for maximum density. Over on the right, to get it off of the torque tube in a little space, we have that's for bifacial modules that are picking up light from the ground, reflected light. Our up and down is always balanced. At any tilt, it never is top heavy. I can turn a whole row with my hand because it is balanced. Over on the right, it shows how it would be stowed during high winds or rain. The wind always hits it from the top, never tries to get underneath. The rain allows the water to, or the up down allows rainwater to rinse off quickly and not make sediment ponds when these are normally stowed flat. So here we have 44 posts. We put on the first 2 torque tubes. Then we put the pick and place machine up on those torque tubes. Then we put on the next 4 torque tubes, roll it forward, put on the end caps for the top of the bearing race. It's not a race, it's just a cap to keep it from blowing off. It's never really going to be rubbing. The journal coupler will not be rubbing against the top. It's always rubbing against the bottom. We put on the first shuttle, cargo shuttle, trolley, and then the second one, and they're loaded with torque tubes, and we start the pick and place, lays out the torque tubes, move forward. We can move over the bearings because they don't have the caps on top and they don't have the journal coupler top half yet. We then put on the next 4 torque tubes, and we're going to build out the rail system in front of us, right? Just like the train going across the West in the 1880s. Again, we put on 4 torque tubes, move forward, torque tubes, move forward, and it continues on. And then as the shuttles get empty, they go back to pick up more torque tubes, never touching the ground. And it keeps going. And now we're near the end, and we only have 2 more torque tubes to attach. We move it forward, put on that last torque tube and that last torque tube, and now we're ready for putting on the modules. All of these bearings, they can be mechanically locked with a simple little bolt, but this is the time to put in the rigging. The rigging is like a long chain with 22-foot long links that go inside the torque tube, and that is it's east and west pull rods, basically, with takeoff cables at every post so that we have distributed wind hold, and there's a winch down at the end on the far left at the road that's going to pull on that rigging to turn the tracker east to west. Again, we got to have that. This is the time to put the rigging in. We couldn't do it before because all of the torque tubes weren't connected yet. We put on the 6 bearing caps on the end, the right end. Remember, over on the left, we already have those ones on. We need these bearing caps because we're going to put the PV on, and it's a chance when that bay between those 2 posts can get blown up into the air with the wind. So we have to have it nailed or locked down. We are going to put the first 2P, 2 in portrait, the second one, and we fill up that bay, and then the other bay on the other side, and now we're going to move back toward where we started. Again, we got to put on those bearing caps before we put any PV on. Load up those 4 bays, move down again, put on the bearing caps. Load up the 4 bays, move down, put on the bearing caps. Continue to load, shuttle and load, all the way down. It's going to go just a repeat pattern, very safe, not touching the ground. It's fast. Workers can actually have platforms on this to attach the modules from underneath, putting on the purling clamps. And we continue on down. Now we remove those 2 shuttles and move the pick and place down one more time. Put on those last 2 bearing caps. Now all of the posts, all of the races have their caps on, so nothing can be blown off. We load up the last 4 bays before we take off the pick and place machine, and now we're going to load up the last 2 bays, and we are finished. That was 1/4 megawatt done very quickly, and all from the end row. We did not have to drive down the aisles. All the delivery is to the end row. Completed 1/4 megawatt. Let's move on to the next 4 rows. Repeat the pattern, and all working from that road on the left. There is a possibility to do 8 rows by making a temporary bridge from one end row to the other row, and just but that's a long way to shuttle the torque tubes and the PV, 140 meters of shuttling. Maybe that's possible, maybe it's not practical.